Hello everyone, welcome to the demo. If you haven't already, make sure that you have your own version of the stackscrambled.blend open so that you can follow along with this demo as I'm teaching you how to navigate within Blender in the 3D viewport. So to get started, I'll show you the basics for the workspace after you've opened Blender. So up here, at the very top of the menu, you'll see some different tabs: layout, modeling, sculpting, UV editing, texture painting. For this demo and for most of the work that we'll be doing, if not all of it, we'll be using the layout preset for our workspace. These are just kind of shortcuts or like a sort of presets that we can tab over to instead of rearranging our main layout. So one thing to note is that our layout, our UI workspace layout, is composed of panels, and each of these panels can be changed depending on what you want their usage to be. So on the top left corner of each panel, we have an icon with a drop-down menu, and currently this panel is set to 3D viewport. If you hover your mouse over the icon underneath editor type, you'll be able to see information about what this editor viewport type is. So over here in this panel, the editor type is outliner. If we open up the drop-down, you'll see there's an outliner option. And we can change this panel to any of the other panels, like change this to a properties panel. And then we'll have two properties panels. We can change this one to the outliner panel. Now we have a properties panel and an outliner panel. And we can change them back. These panels can be resized by hovering your mouse over the edge of a panel and pulling left or right or up and down. You can also get rid of panels by waiting until your cursor turns into a cross and dragging up or down to the panel that you want to eliminate. So the panel that's darkened, it's going to disappear when you release the left mouse button. There we go. And you can bring a panel back or open up a panel by dragging left, right, up, or down in the same way that you deleted a panel. So I'm going to change this panel back to the outliner type. You can basically delete as many panels, and you can delete panels until you only have one or a few panels. You can customize it however you like, but we're just going to stick with the basic layout. So I'll bring all of our panels back, 3D viewport. I'm going to come over here, make this an outliner, and open up another panel and make that into a properties panel. Now you might have seen me change the treatment, the visual treatment of this 3D viewport panel. And we do that by coming up here to viewport shading options. Here we have solid, or the solid mode option. It means that you are not going to see any material effects from materials or lighting or anything like that. It's basically just like a default mesh rendering. In the wireframe setting, you see no faces rendered, you only see lines. Here we have opaque faces rendering our mesh. Here we have some basic material treatment. And in the last viewport setting, which is rendered, we have a preview of what our render will be based on our rendering engine. This scene is set up to use the Eevee engine. It's very fast, very basic. Later on, I'll be showing you how to use cycles, but for this demo and for a lot of the intro demos, we're going to use Eevee because it helps the program to just run a little faster. We'll get through everything more quickly. So let's click back to Material Preview. And again, if you haven't set up your user preferences yet, make sure you do so by going up to Edit, Preferences, and checking that you have your settings set up the same way that each of these windows is set up. You can press pause on the video to check to make sure that your user preferences are set up the same way. Or you can go back to the user preference video, watch that, and see any explanations that you, or in-depth details about the different settings that we're currently using. Now with that, the assignment is to stack these objects from bottom to top, largest to smallest. And in order to do that, you're going to need a fundamental understanding of how to navigate within the 3D view. And I will show you how to do that now. So I am screencasting my keys for you, and this means that you can look in the bottom left-hand corner to see what mouse gestures I'm using or what keys I'm pressing in order to achieve any action that you see on screen. So first, in order to rotate our 3D viewport, we're going to middle mouse drag within the viewport. So hold your middle mouse key and drag across. Now you need a middle mouse key in order to navigate in the 3D program. If you do not have a mouse with a middle mouse button, make sure that you get one as soon as possible. In the meantime, if you just absolutely do not have one and you need to emulate a 3-button mouse, come up here to Input and you're going to use Emulate 3-button mouse. This means that you can middle mouse click with Alt left mouse button. I highly suggest and just highly recommend making sure that you get a mouse with a middle mouse wheel and a middle mouse button as soon as possible, because it's going to allow you to navigate within the 3D space a lot more intuitively. So again, in order to rotate within the 3D view, you're going to hold, drag your middle mouse button. In order to pan the view, you're going to hold Shift and middle mouse drag again. And in order to zoom in and out, you're going to put your cursor wherever you want to target your zoom and middle mouse wheel up and middle mouse wheel down. So middle mouse wheel up goes to zoom in and middle mouse wheel down zooms out. Another useful utility is to target different objects so that you can rotate around a targeted object within the scene. So in order to do that, you'll need to learn how to select. So in order to select an object, you're going to right click. And now the object is highlighted to show that it's selected. It's orange outline. And in order to focus on that object, you're going to press period on your number pad. And now when you rotate your viewport, it rotates around this object that is framed or focused currently. So go ahead and right click on different objects, press number pad period to focus, zoom in, zoom out on the object, pan around, and this is going to get you used to navigating within the 3D space. Now, if you do not have a number pad, again, this is something that you can change in your user preferences. If you don't have a number pad and you're trying to use period on your keyboard, if you haven't set up the hotkey for it, you're going to get some kind of like a circular menu, and I will show you what I mean. So if you go to key map, key binding, period, I'll type in period, and I'll restore the default settings. You'll see this here. In the future, you might want to use this menu. I don't typically use it because we have these settings up here in a drop-down menu that are just they're easy to get to. And if you do not have a number pad, you're definitely going to want to use your period button to focus instead of bringing up this menu. So in order to change that, you come over here to where it says frame selected and pivot point. We're going to delete this shortcut. And if you delete it, don't worry. You can always restore it if you want to later. So delete that shortcut and replace the top one that said control number pad with the regular period key on your keyboard. And now you have that functionality available to you if you do not have a number pad. So there we go. So go ahead and in your own open version of Blender, jump around to these different objects in the 3D space and rotate around them. Pan your view. Just get used to moving around to where you want to in your 3D space. So again, pan is shift middle mouse. Zoom in, zoom out, middle mouse wheel in, out. And rotate is middle mouse drag. So when you're nice and comfortable with these gestures and with skipping around, selecting objects, and navigating within the 3D viewport, we'll start stacking our objects from largest to smallest. So the first object is the red one, the base, which is the largest. So currently it may be hard to see which objects are larger or smaller compared to other objects because we have perspective enabled. Perspective mode means that when objects are closer, they appear larger, and when objects are farther away, they appear smaller, as if they are in real 3D space with a vanishing point. In order to have a better idea of which items or which objects on the screen are larger or smaller comparative to other objects on the screen, we're going to enable orthographic mode. So with orthographic mode, there is no vanishing point. I can pull this object. I can move this object by right-clicking and dragging. And no matter where I put this object, it's going to stay the same size because orthographic mode says that lines are parallel. So basically orthographic means that everything is going to be its apparent size, no matter where it is in 3D space. This is useful for when we want to validate the size of an object without perspective getting in the way. As you work more in the 3D space, you'll start to understand why this is important, but just kind of understand that with perspective mode, it's more like how we see things in real life. In orthographic mode, it's more like you'd see something on an instruction manual, for example. In order to toggle between orthographic and perspective, I'm going to go to the number pad and press 5. You can tell when you are in perspective or orthographic mode by looking up in the top left corner of your 3D viewport. So I toggle 5, I'm in orthographic. I toggle again, I'm in perspective. You can also use the top row number to toggle between orthographic and perspective. So orthographic, perspective. If you want to see all of the objects from head on, you can press 1, 3, or 7. So 1 is going to be front, 3 is the side view, and 7 is a top view. So 1, 3, 7. And try that yourself. Press 1, 3, 7 to switch between front, side, and top. When you press 3, the side view is always going to allow you to see the left side of the objects on screen. So if you're modeling a character or something like that, you're going to be looking at the character's left side. So, and the top is self-explanatory. If you want to look at the back, you're going to press 9. If you press 8, 4, 2, or 6, you can partially rotate your view. And I believe it's rotated by maybe 15 degrees, though don't quote me. I hardly use these partial rotations, and I usually stick with using 1, 3, 7. I rarely use 9, if ever. So the only keys that you'll really need are 1, 3, and 7, and 5. And if you have enabled emulate number pad, then you can use your top row of keys 1, 3, 5, 7 as well. So to get started on the assignment itself, now we have a very clear view of the size of each of the objects on screen. And we can move them around and compare size easily since we're in orthographic mode. Now I'm going to show you how to move these objects around. And I'm going to also show you how to scale and rotate objects, though you will not need to scale and rotate for this demo. In Blender, the 3 keys that you'll be using to translate, rotate, and scale are G, R, and S. G to grab, R to rotate, and S to scale. Now, it's G to grab because Blender has just been using the vocabulary grab since the beginning. Other programs might use the T key or the word translate, but in Blender it's grab. So I'm going to grab this red object, which is like a 3D trapezoid, and place it above the platform. It doesn't need to be perfect. You just place it so that it's sitting on the platform, or so that it appears to be sitting on the platform. Now I'm going to press Shift, middle mouse, pan, so that I can see all of the other objects. Another way to grab an object is to right-click and drag. You can let go of the mouse after you've initiated the drag, and the object is not going to, it's still going to follow the mouse. So you can let go of the right-click button. If you right-click again, this will cancel the action. So right-click, drag, right-click again, cancel. If you want to set the action, you can left-click, right-click, cancel, left-click, set. This is a functionality that we also set up in the user preferences. So right-click, we're going to check and see which of these trapezoids is the next biggest. It looks like the orange one. So we're going to set this orange one on top of the red. Again, doesn't need to be perfect, but you just set it up there. And we can move along to yellow. and the green, the teal, blue, purple, and magenta. And now we have a cone. All right, so you might be thinking that our job is done now, but let's come out of this front view and see what we have. Oh, look at that. What happened? Well, the reason our objects are not lined up is because we only validated that the objects are correct in 3D space in one view, which is the front view. And remember when I said that orthographic view, like the orthographic mode, makes objects appear as if they are the same size no matter how close or far away from you they are. That means that in this view, everything looks correct, but in the side view, we're going to see where things are actually sitting in space. So front view, things look correct, but they're not. Side view gives us a more realistic representation of where things are in 3D space. Now, if we go to front view and we press 5 to go into perspective, then we can really see where objects are sitting in the 3D space because we have that illusion of a vanishing point to help us with the depth perception. But if we tried to place these objects the way that we did in orthographic mode, it would be very difficult. So how do we fix this? Well, all we have to do is validate that the objects are sitting in the right place in 2 views. So now I can take this red object and slide it over to the middle of the platform where it should be, right? One useful thing that you'll want to learn now is how to translate an object while locking it to an axis. So we want to move all of these objects based on the y-axis. So we're going to start to translate. You can either press G to grab or right-click drag and move your object in the direction that you want to translate and middle mouse click. And that's going to lock the object on the y-axis. Now I can tell it's the y-axis because this line is green, which matches this line here, which matches this sort of gizmo that tells us which colors correspond with which axis. So green is Y, red is X, and blue is Z. So again, I'm going to select yellow, the yellow object, and drag it over to the middle while locking the axis. I'll pick the green and drag it over while locking the axis. Teal, oops, press 5 again, or press 3. Drag it over. This one, drag it over. And the purple over, and magenta at the top, drag it over. There. And now, when you rotate your camera around in 3D space, you have your objects placed. Now, if we go to top view, voila, all the objects are still placed correctly. So the thing to understand about working in 3D orthographic view is that if you have something, so your objects correct looking in 2 different views, you'll automatically have it looking correct in all other views. So if you have front and side view correct, you're going to get the top view for free and all of the other views for free. That's why when you see, like if you watch videos of people doing any kind of 3D modeling, they're going to toggle between front view and side view very often to make sure that they're placing their objects correctly in space. And as you begin to practice yourself, you're going to do the same. And it's a good practice as well to begin to swivel around in 3D space to validate that things look correct. Let's say I want to adjust the location of this teal trapezoid. You can grab it and middle mouse click on the y-axis and place it a little better. So for your first assignment, when you get to this place, this means you're done. You're done for your first assignment. You've stacked all of your objects, which tells me that you've learned how to navigate within the 3D view. You understand a little bit of the difference between perspective and orthographic view. You've learned how to translate objects in the 3D space. You have your user preferences set up, and you're good to go with the basics. So when you're done, go to File and Save As. Be sure to name your file according to the instructions on the assignment. And submit.